Hello. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
uh, hello and hi. Have you taken your Tylenol today?
Uh,
Uh,
I, I have.
yeah.
I
Uh,
have. Actually, no. I actually gave up Tylenol, not for the crazy people reasons, but like apparently it's not good for your liver, and you shouldn't take it if you have liver problems. So here we are.
it's true, and I drink a little bit more, so ibuprofen I'll stick with.
Ibuprofen is really, I think, is the winner, anyways. I mean, you know,
It's
uh,
more well-rounded.
we've had now what a couple episodes hanging out. We've done some good stuff. It's kind of fun to be back in the chair. I have something cool and fun to show off
I love cool and fun things to show up. What do you have?
for our YouTube. Our YouTube people, they'll get to see it. The podcast people, you just get to use your imagination, I guess. But I think, Bo, as you know, my parents are moving, and my dad is kind of clearing out some of his stuff, just his collection of things. So I've had the helmet for quite a while. He picked it up when he was in Puerto Rico. This 1941 issue, the pie pan American helmet. Good stuff, right? Brody helmet, good deal. But the one thing that was always with this that I always wanted was the gas mask.
Ooh.
Now, of course, can't use it because it's like an asbestos can, essentially, at the point. But, do you have mesothelioma? No, but you might.
No, but I will.
So we leave that up on like the top of the bookshelf. But anyways, all stuff that he picked up while I was in Puerto Rico. So it's all World War II issue. It's kind of neat. But anyhow, that's my new cool stuff. I was very excited about it. I just needed to share.
And of all places to pick it up, Puerto Rico.
Well, we picked up a dog there too. So
Oh, well, very important.
yeah. So I mean, I guess you kind of get a little bit of everything. You get a dog, you get a gas mask, a story that never ends, really, I think is the best way of looking at it. I mean, come on. So lots of fun, good stuff there. That was exciting. So it now lives on the shelf behind me, and we'll do some changing out of uniform stuff here. Just ready for a new backdrop, ready for something.
As you do. I'm encouraging, because Christmas is going to be here before we know it. But I have yet to replace like the 3 bookshelves I lost.
Yeah.
In the big move, because I don't know, I don't feel like spending money on like particle board ones. So I'm like encouraging people who are better with their hands than I am to craft me one out of real wood. Maybe Santa will bring me one, but I've not been a very good boy this year. So
what do you have against particle board?
I just lost 3 of them in my move. So
I feel like you're just hard on equipment. I mean, these things they've been to Slidell, to Hammond, to Tennessee and back. Multiple moves in Tennessee, multiple moves in Louisiana. You've moved some of them.
Yeah.
And what? That's 6 of them right here that have all survived. Wow. It's just about.
I am rough on stuff.
It's the delicate hands.
Yeah, that's where you got me.
It's I'm a very gentle creature.
Creature, yes. Gentle, maybe.
Speaking of gentle creatures, no.
We do. I'm sure that nobody came to Homebrew to listen to us. Share insults back and forth.
Actually, that's exactly why they're here.
You know what? We should probably have a Homebrew roast hour, maybe one day. But we do have a guest tonight, don't we?
We do indeed. How about you introduce our guest? Because I feel like I introduce guests all the time.
It's true. Well, this guest of ours, it's true. This guest of ours is actually a former colleague of both of us during our time at Southeastern Louisiana University. The pride of the Southeastern Lions and our favorite medieval historian. We have with us tonight Dr. Lauren Doughty. Dr. Lauren Doughty is going to be right here. There she is. The mastermind behind Southeastern's Social Studies Fair.
Ooh.
We all love and hold near and dear to our hearts.
All right, I still think the best social studies fair has to be Hitler, Monster, or Innovator. That or the cotton balls of red paint that was supposed to be 9/11. Those were my highlights of my graduate career.
Yeah, you missed Anglo-Saxons in space, which is near and dear to my heart.
That actually sounds really fun.
It made no sense, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. So
it feels like a Dan Jones book.
It was very much a conspiracy theory, project. I don't know exactly what happened. I stayed away from it.
Frankly, we need to get that kid on the show.
He was something special. I think he's probably in high school at this point and has his own theories on life, love, and what the Anglo-Saxons were doing in space.
All I can think about is Anglo-Saxons in space.
I mean, I feel like Mel Brooks is really missing out on some stuff right there.
I just see a giant catapult, or a trebuchet just absolutely launching Anglo-Saxons as far as they can.
I mean, there's so many possibilities. That was a year, Anglo-Saxons in space, but Hitler, Innovator, or Monster was pretty big. That was pretty epic.
Yeah, that was something. I mean, when another professor walks over to you and says, "I think I'm going to go home and blow my brains out," it's like, oh, that's rough out here today, isn't it?
That was a wild time for us all.
Yeah. Truly. Yeah. Well, here we are in somewhat even more wild times, and we're going to talk tonight about the secret lives of Viking wives. I told Catherine, my wife, what I was thinking about titling this, and she's like, I was like, we're going to talk about sex with Vikings with Dr. Doughty, and she goes, I actually happen to know something about that. I've seen the show Vikings before.
I know so many people, that's their reference point for it. And it's sort of like, if you're a World War II historian, they're like, oh my God, I love Band of Brothers. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, of course you do.
All right. So Vikings is not exactly accurate, but it's a great gateway drug, I like to say. Because it gets you interested enough to go actually, hopefully, do the real history and do some actual reading from some much better source material than that. But yeah,
I have to say, like, I didn't think that I would ever be interested in, the way back times.
Stuff we typically don't do here on Home.
Yes. Yeah, this is a little outside of your purview, so I appreciate
You're throwing me out of my wheelhouse here tonight. Like, we're dancing in other uncharted territories.
We got to challenge ourselves, right? As historians, you got to step outside, because if you stay in your bubble for too long, you just become the, weird dude in a pinstripe suit or, whatever, sitting in the corner saying, well, in my day, right?
It's a tweed jacket, red pants. That's the World War II uniform for us is red pants, tweed coat. I may or may not have already jumped that.
That particular shark, you're already on that side of it.
Yeah, we got there. But I was gonna say is like, there's so many different entryways into this time period. You mentioned the Vikings. Like, I think Anglo-Saxon history, early Anglo-Saxons. I just finished up reading the Plantagenets by Dan Jones. Like, it's a wonderful little jump into the time period that I have practically no basis for, because unlike some people, I spent no time on it in school. I didn't need it, so I didn't take it, so I didn't bother with it, so I didn't care.
Yeah, people tend to be, especially once you get to the master's level, they tend to be one track courses. You're either like, I love American, I love colonial, I love this war, I love that war, and you go off into that track and never to be seen again. Or you turn European and then you're like, oh no, I love intellectual history, or I love the Renaissance, and go off. And so never the two worlds shall meet. And I think that's a disservice to both sides of this aisle in particular, because American historians could learn a lot from Europeanists, medievalists, particularly like me, and I can learn a lot from Americanists, from your perspectives on things. So I think it's important that we have these kind of discussions back and forth and expose each other to things that we wouldn't naturally be drawn to.
There's going to be a lot of exposing in this episode, right, Bo?
There is, quite literally. We promise that we won't. People pay us to keep our clothes on. And that is a promise. That is not a threat.
Yes.
We promise to keep our clothes on.
I certainly hope for all of our sakes.
All of our sakes and all of our eyes. I have my glasses on so I can see just fine. So, Lauren, tell us, a little bit, because in full disclosure, Dr. Doughty had sent us a paper that she had written specifically for a Loyola talk. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is pulled from some work I had originally done kind of in my early days of dissertating. So, as with any major work that you do or after you graduate, you start dissecting your various papers and whatnot to mine for more topics. And as an ABD, all but dissertation, I was trying to whore myself out, as it were, to anyone that would be willing to possibly employ me in the future. And so a very wonderful medievalist, Sarah Butler, invited me to come and talk about my specialty and specialize in Anglo-Scandinavian studies. So I played up the fact, and I've used this paper a couple of times. So I sent you kind of like a little condensed version that I've used at various things when I needed, to trot out in front and say, this is what I kind of do. And the best way to get an audience is often to talk about, sex.
Sex sells.
It certainly does.
And we definitely try, and now whether we do a good job of this or not on homebrew history, we try to make history sexy. And
look at that.
Yeah, I know. We try.
Most of the time, it just looks like a tired old bag. But here we go.
But hey, it's the thought that counts. But Lauren, what did you find? Because I kind of reading over your paper, it was very interesting because like Joey said, neither he or I are well versed in really anything since, like, I don't know, like really about 1939-ish, maybe a little earlier.
I give myself some credit. I am a Civil
War stuff. Yeah,
I was about to say at least the Civil War, 1860.
True.
I can go back further than that, though. Like we can do colonial.
Yeah, true. It was mostly a joke there, because we do a lot of Civil War and World War II stuff here on Homebrew History. So
not as far back as this, right?
Very, very much so. I think we may have done maybe 2 episodes, maybe 3, in our tenure here on Homebrew History on anything.
We did an episode on the Anglo-Saxons with Emma.
We did,
all the way back in the beginning.
We sure did.
And we did a Stonehenge episode.
Burial sites.
We did Stonehenge with James Holland.
Oh, see, that's even pre-Anglo-Saxon, so that's Brittonic, right? So that's very, very early Iron Age. So you're back there. You're in the same realm. This, however, is a little more to the east. So I focus on, in particular, in this talking about how concubinage, the practice of concubinage, tends to be something that, at least in the last few years, is only starting to get attention from European historians, because it was we tended to look at it as an Eastern thing, and Oriental thing. Oh, it's Chinese. It doesn't fit in the schema of Northern European marriage, and in fact, it really does. That the plurality of not quite wives, but not quite fallen women, allowed Vikings in particular, Scandinavians, and those of their ilk, both Anglo-Saxon and later Normans, to really take advantage of a plurality of heirs, because you never know, your first son might be a dud, and you gotta keep your options open.
Hate when that happens.
I mean, we can point back to kings who, the first sons were not, out of the box great.
Looking at you, Henry VIII.
Man.
Well, anyway, as I get over this cough and this cold here, so I kind of want you to kind of explain, especially early on, not only in Viking history, but even because you kind of even predate that a little bit in your paper about the history of concubinage. And so, how are they defined? Like, is a concubine also a prostitute?
No, it is very much, particularly it starts out in kind of Roman law, this early sort of even into the 3rd century CE, you start to see Roman jurists talk about there's a special class of women. They're not harlots. They're not, your regular street walkers, ladies of the evening, but they're not wives. They're not in that monogamous relationship. They're not under the legal umbrella of wives, but they have what we could sort of compare it to is, if you've been with someone for 10 years, you're the legal wife. You're not really married, but you have those same legal protections, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that they're talking about, because in the Roman period, yes, primogeniture, the first son inherits, but there's other ways of inheritance. So they're trying to carve out these legal means to understand complex relationships between men and women. So concubines get this protected almost status of understanding. And particularly in the Roman period, it's very easy to gain divorces. Marriage is not just something that's so ironclad and forever. It's property, it's money, and you can very easily secure a divorce depending on what status you are in Roman society. So these concubines need legal protections to be like, hey, I've been with this guy for 10 years. I should get, some money. I should get this. I should be protected. I should have some sort of legal ramification, that being taken care of. And you see this proliferate throughout, particularly Northern Europe. You see Vikings use concubines, kings and nobles. And in Anglo-Saxon England, you see what we call it is polygyny. It's not polygamy because they're not marriages. It's polygyny. So you're talking about these extra relationships, extra legal relationships that have some nominal legality to it because you're putting a name to it. But more importantly, it allows, especially women, the option of choice in a world where there's not a lot of choice, which seems almost counterintuitive.
So one of the things, as we sit here and try and define what these words are, one of the things that you point out is that language and vocabulary is very imprecise in recorded history and the documentation behind all these things. So walk us through maybe slave, servant, obtained, had, right?
Yeah.
So we look at these things and to us, oh yeah, I mean, they're synonymous, but.
So you're talking about in the Viking sagas. This is in particular where we see this modifier and what's being modified. So you're looking really into the language, not so much in Norse laws, but in these king's sagas. And you're seeing that they're describing women as having been had. They're a servant or a slave, but not quite. They're more distinguished than that. I have my my Anglo-Saxon is better than my Old Norse, so you'll have to forgive anything that I mispronounce. Oh my goodness. I have my notes so I can say it correctly. It's oh my goodness, my internet's not working. Here we go. Where's my terminology? Because I want to get this correct. Because in Roman law, it's pelex, but you can talk about ambata, which means either slave or servant, or more precisely frithla, which is an extramarital concubine. Frithla you see much more in the sagas, which is a legal distinction. You have that very much codified, not quite codified, but referred to enough that you have that. But it's the modifier. So you can have an ambat or a slave or a servant that you have obtained, theke, or ati. You can also obtain women, konur. I have obtained a woman. I've obtained, konur can also be wife. So it's this, noun with a modifier that can be very extreme, and it causes very different interpretations. You also have hlagahana ser, which is having placed himself in bed next to. So that implies some sort of illicitness, right? He has placed himself, a man has placed himself next to someone in bed. So again, it's contextual. You have to look at the context clues. You have to, there's in that where I discuss in particular in this paper, the illicit love visits, where in the sagas you talk about men like sneaking in and visiting women. They're not wives. You don't get the full backstory of like, oh, this is a wife, this is a sweetheart, but you might have a child from this illicit love visit. And that child isn't discarded. It isn't, looked down upon. It's just part and parcel of the story. So there's no shame attached to these words, which is very much interesting for historians, because it's not a shameful title. There's not a shameful position of concubine. It is equitable to wife. I appreciate the scroll across the bottom. Thank you.
We do what we can to be amenable here on homebrew history. Yeah, I mean, it seems like too that, especially in the early, uses of the term, concubinage, and it seems like to me that it's more so, at least for women, it seems more of a political power play than it is an actual sexual relationship. And it seems more so, and we know this, that another colleague of ours, Dr. Craig Saucier, especially when we talk about the age of religious warfare, right?
Oh, Lord. Okay, yeah.
Well, when we talk about that, it always seems that the political issues, always supersede, the religious issues there. Whereas this, it's more of the politics is always seemingly superseding, in this case, the sexual relationship, right?
I mean, these are, to borrow a term from the modern lexicon, they could be modern gold diggers, because you are not doing this. You're not seeing concubines with your little farmer that's out, farming his land and scooping up heron. Like that's not what that life is. It's nobles, it's kings, and women really see this as an opportunity to advance not only themselves, but their family members. I mean, especially because you can just be a pretty girl in a village and a king comes wandering by. He's like, hey, baby. And hey, okay, you go along with him. You're this, established relationship. You may have a few kids, who knows, but you're able to catapult yourself and your family out of arguably poverty. And you're able to have the king's ear. You're able to participate in a way that is not as structured as wifedom, as stringent as that like little box that women can be, put in the medieval period. You're a free agent, as it were. So you can be, you can move on when it no longer suits you. So there's a lot of power and not as much stigma as you would think coming from, a period in the early high Middle Ages.
Well, Joey, should we take a brief commercial break and get back to it?
Perhaps we should. Perhaps we should take a commercial break.
We'll see y'all in a moment.
Homebrew History is brought to you by Civil War Trails. Civil War Trails is the world's largest outdoor museum with more than 1,600 sites in 6 different states. Civil War Trails can be part of your next family vacation just by simply visiting their website, and you can find the link below in our description, or visit civilwartrails.org, where you can request a free brochure for your next road trip. Whether or not you're heading to the beach or off to Disney World, or maybe you're heading just around the block, you can make Civil War Trails part of your trip. Visit our friends at Civil War Trails. For $5 a month, you can support Homebrew History. Head over to our Buy Me a Coffee page where you can subscribe and become a member of the Homebrew crew. There, for just $5, you get access to ad-free episodes, exclusive episodes with our guests. You get a little bit more bang for your buck when it comes to the whole series episodes. We've got a series coming out, you get the whole thing all in one run, as opposed to having to wait around like everyone else. Join us over on the Buy Me a Coffee page and help support Homebrew History. Remember, for just $5 a month, you make sure Homebrew History has enough. Homebrew History is proud to partner with our friend the bearded historian Jeff Williams. Head on over to his shop where you can check out some of his great designs. He's got all kinds of great designs just waiting for you, featuring artifacts and objects from all kinds of historical periods, and designs featuring some of your favorite scenes and actors from films and series like A Bridge Too Far, Band of Brothers, Gettysburg, Kelly's Heroes, and much, much more. If you're not already following us over on Facebook, Instagram, and now Blue Sky, check us out and make sure that you're subscribed and listening to us on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, and on YouTube. And if you're watching that YouTube channel, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll be back after just a few commercial messages.
That's a lie. We're back now. I mean,
Yes.
we're back with even more Vikings.
Yuck.
These are the suckier versions, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, for the audio people, you don't see it, but for everyone else, it's the Minnesota Vikings, and God knows that they suck. What was it Craig used to say? Is like, I'd rather pull for a team of Al Qaeda operatives.
That sounds like something he'd say.
So as we stare at yet another picture of even more Vikings, one of the things that you kind of point out in here are some of the Anglo-Saxon laws, and we've talked a little bit about the conditions and some of the protections that go along with it. But I mean, some of these protections, they're actually codified in things like a charter concerning the betrothal of a woman. Like, we see where some of the protections and the idea of protection, rather, like these promises, are there.
Yeah.
What necessarily do those protections mean? And how are they? Because in here you talk about how it lasts well into the 12th century. How is it practiced?
So really, once you start getting the codification, this is where, particularly in the Anglo-Saxon period, you start to see the adoption of Christianity really trying to, or the Catholic Church really trying to put a stop to concubinage, or at least like modify it. And it's through that effort you start to see churchmen preaching against it, or saying, well, if we have to have it, then we should regulate it. And you start to see in law codes, you see it really in the later law codes from about Alfred onwards, where you start to see kings trying to regulate female power in this way to not only protect women, allowing some sort of property to be exchanged, dowers to be exchanged. You're trying to protect the woman's rights, not rights, but the woman's abilities to control her own choice, which is one of the major selling points of concubinage, at least from a female perspective, is choice. You're not tied down in this monogamous relationship. You can cut and leave when and if you need. And the law codes really start protecting more and more betrothal processes, forming up sort of this wall of protection around marriage, making it the ultimate goal, and making women and men move away from the concubine sort of relationship that's a little loosey-gooseier, a little less controlled, and one that's much more structured and rigid. So you see that occurring as Anglo-Saxon Christianity comes really into play. And once you get into sort of Alfred's period, which is later 9th century, into that period, Christianity, a lot of people think, oh, Catholic Church, everybody was Christian. Fall of Rome, everybody's Christian. That is by long shot not the case at all. Anglo-Saxon England really doesn't embrace Christianity in nominal, I mean, in a real way until the 11th century, late 11th, early 12th centuries. You still got, pagans running around happily, a lot of pagans happily. So you're having the church is trying to combat this, and it's on both sides where you see that royal power is trying to ally itself with the church, and the church is saying, hey, you need to deal with this like proliferation of women that are just out there, just letting it hang out. We need to firm this up. So it's kind of hand in hand with the growth of royal power, where we see kings in Anglo-Saxon England trying to take power and really define what things are, what his jurisdiction is. He can decide about betrothal practices. He can say this is what marriage is, and he's backed up by the church, right? So it no longer becomes something that is as attractive for men or women to really pursue these concubinal relationships.
And something kind of interesting too that I was kind of reading in your paper as well is it does kind of seem that this is kind of where we see the emergence of the Roman Catholic Church beginning to affect the nobility and of Western Europe, especially as it pertained to marriage. And do you think that the church is doing this on purpose to purposefully ally themselves kind of very early on with the rise of maybe more powerful kings?
I mean, it works hand in hand. All of these things are happening in concert with one another. You see the Merovingian dynasty dying out, right? And at that point, you're moving into the Carolingian, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the 8th century. And the Carolingians are trying to distinguish themselves. So they ally with the church and they get consecrated. And you have this blessing ceremony that happens. And the Anglo-Saxons are like, oh, yeah, that legitimizes my line over everything else. So the churchmen are saying, hey, if you want us to bless you, you need to like straighten up and fly right. And at the same time, you have you have kings saying, hey, if we're straightening up and flying right, you need to have clerical celibacy. We need to see this exchange, right? So it's both of these things building what ultimately becomes sort of the prototypical kings and queens of the later Middle Ages, king, queen, the archbishop, blessing. This is all in the early infancy. So these things go together. Concubinage needs to be knocked out because it's an impetus to these things merging together. You need one king, one queen, one singular line going from him, and that's going to cut down on the confusion, right? So it's both of them firming up their resolve up the chain. And it's such an interesting period looking at the Anglo-Scandinavians, Anglo-Saxons from this period, because it's so medieval, but it's not. It's the structure that you're taught in that beautiful feudal pyramid that doesn't actually exist, but it also is forming that pyramid in whatever context you believe in that. And it's absolutely fascinating because it all's figuring itself out.
Well, especially early on, with the nobility, obviously, establishing lineage, establishing family dynasties is obviously incredibly important. And there's also something to be said about the stability of a kingdom when you know which head the crown goes on after the one that wears it is dead.
Yeah, I mean, and the beauty of, from the perspective of both Scandinavians and early Anglo-Saxons, having a bunch of different heirs, because as I talked about in my paper extensively, it's that if any kid is acknowledged, like, hey, yeah, I had relations with the mom, all the dad has to say is, yep, that's mine. And he is a possible heir. This happens throughout the sagas. You see it time and time again. You see it in Anglo-Saxon England. If you're even, oh, that's, my dad's first child from, first marriage, not even, I'm, illegitimate. It doesn't stand in the way of inheritance, which during this period, when 2 out of 5 children are going to make it past their 5th birthday, hey, having that proliferation of heirs. And also, some of your kids might be idiots. You don't want to pass on the throne to a moron. So you got to see which one's going to be decent. And it gives the kings flexibility, right? But as you move farther into the medieval period, you need less flexibility and you need more structure, right? Because structure equals continuity equals money, and money makes the world go round. So it's stable politics equals stable economy, and we can grow. But chaos between, if you have two illegitimate heirs fighting it out, I mean, it's going to destabilize everything. And you see this through the Carolingian period. Charlemagne's grandsons, Louis the Fat, Louis the German. Excuse me, I shouldn't call him Louis the Fat. He's Louis the German. Charles the Bald, and the third brother, whose name escapes me at the moment. I'm enjoying. They have to split up the kingdom. They're all, sons of Louis the Pious. They're all, equal, and they split Charlemagne's empire into three.
Is it Lothar?
Yeah, Lothar. There we go. Lothar.
Yay, I know stuff.
Well, you should by this point. You've been teaching it enough.
Fair.
So, I mean, you need to condense the line. You need to figure stuff out. And we see this in the modern monarchy. You're getting rid of extra heirs. Like, they're cute, great on camera, but they need to be off trooping the balcony or trooping the colors. Like, just, make it simplified for people. And that's what the church and royal authority is trying to do by about, I'd say, late 10th, early 11th century. That's when you really see sort of the hardening of that happening.
And imagine, too, it probably prevents a lot of bloodletting later on in terms of contested paths to the throne.
You would think that. I mean, even during, the period of the conquest, you still have the multiplicity of heirs into the 11th century. You've got extra heirs coming out from all different places. And it does, to some extent, it allows the people to kind of well, maybe we should go with this guy. There's
actually, I like Jeff. Jeff is a good guy. Yeah.
Pretty good. Let's go with this guy. So it allows, at one point, during a very pivotal moment, Queen Emma has her stepson Edmund Ironside on one side. Her husband Aethelred has passed. This is about 1014, 1015. She's held up in London. A little off topic, but still on. She's held up in London. She doesn't know what to do. She has two sons across the channel, legitimate sons. She has a stepson in the north, and what will be eventually her husband, Canute, who is a Viking, and everybody's split. No, so she's queen, and she just kind of has to wait and see how it plays out between her stepson and a Viking, and everybody chooses the Viking. It's wildness.
Now, for the super uninitiated, hi, that's me. That's me. Hi, I'm the one. When we started out this episode, we called it The Secret Lives of Viking Wives, but we've talked a lot about the Anglo-Saxons, and we've talked a lot about the Normans as we go. So how do we trace the lineage of this practice by the Vikings through to the Anglo-Saxons that we think about in the 10th and 11th century?
So nothing is as truly segmented as we would like to think it is. Not everybody in Scandinavia stays in their little spot and, as per Vikings, discovers a compass. I remember the god Loki gives them a compass. I can't remember. I did not watch the show. It was painful. But there's overlaps of cultural continuity, but more importantly,
there's also these Vikings, so we can go back to looking at Jordan Jefferson, so whatever it takes.
But we have, starting in 793, Scandinavians, Vikings, to go a Viking, they start invading England on the eastern coast at Lindisfarne, 793. They start raiding and trading and settling all throughout England. Through the 9th century, they start attacking what will be Carolingian France. And so we see Viking settlement throughout these regions, and a lot of cultural overlap between these cultures. And they pick things up between the two, and Viking settlements as far as, Dublin is a Viking settlement. Dublin is between the rivers, or at the fork of the rivers. It's a Viking word. Normandy, I believe, is a Viking settlement originally. They're the Duchy of the Northmen, paid to stop Viking raiding down the Seine into Paris, paid extremely well with a large chunk of land at the mouth of the Seine at that northernmost part of the channel to basically stop anyone else coming through, because Paris had been devastated in the mid-9th century, been burned down by Vikings, and they tried everything to stop them. They put bridges, the Parisians put bridges across the river, and it was so frustrating because these beautiful built not armored, but like, bridges. And the Vikings just would get out of their longships and drag the longships around the bridge, these fortified bridges, and pull them back into the water and wave and keep going, which must have been insanely frustrating if you were a defender sitting in this defended bridge, just waiting to like rain down a hail of arrows on a Viking longship, and they just go around you. So the Normans are the answer from Charles the Simple. It's like, hey, you stay here, I give you land, you stop your friends from invading. And I talk about this great story. The first Norman is a guy named Rollo. And he is a Viking raider. There's great stories about him. He fakes his death in Italy to break into a town. It's great. It's Ludo, Italy. He gets confused. He thinks he's in Rome, and the place closes their gates to keep them out. And he's like, oh, but he sends messengers, and it's like, oh, he's died. Can we, he's a Christian. Can we, bury him? And of course, the bishop's like, well, come on in. And so they bring in the coffin and all of the mourners, and they're like, you can't have weapons. And they're like, well, yeah. And they bring him into the cathedral, and Rollo literally pops out of the coffin with a axe and kills the bishop. And he's like, I've conquered Rome. And they're like, it's not Rome. And you're like, oh, man, damn.
Confused.
Took a wrong turn at Albuquerque.
Wrong turn. But they end up in Normandy, what will be Normandy, and Rollo marries legally in a Christian ceremony the daughter of Charles the Simple, a Carolingian, and he now is legitimized. He is a duke, and he founds the Norman dynasty, and it goes all the way down to William the Bastard, whose family keeps up with this. His mother, William the Bastard, aka the Conqueror, is the daughter of a tanner. His father is the Duke, and they have an illicit love marriage, not marriage, but illicit love, whatever. And he inherits the duchy. His illegitimacy posed no threat to his inheritance. He was the clear heir. And the only thing he had a problem with, William didn't mind being called William the Bastard. He didn't like when people made fun of the smell, because his mom and grandparents were tanners. So they, stunk of the tannery. So people would make fun of him saying you smell of the tannery. Like, you're low born. That's the issue. Yeah, that, he would get real pissy. There's great stories in various chronicles about William the Conqueror being real angry if somebody says, whoo, you smell. And he'd kill them very quickly.
How rude.
It was very rude.
No, Bo, I think exactly what time it is.
It is. So, Lauren, what Boohickey history is, it is just absolute, just rubbish. Something that is just absolutely ridiculous, something that people get wrong. So when it comes to the secret lives of Viking wives, what do we get wrong?
Oh, you get wrong.
What do you want people to know?
Well, honestly, there's two things. I'll give you two. It'll be a twofer. One is there are no horns on Viking helmets. There are no horns on Viking helmets. They are what lives in Scandinavia that has horns like that? Also, in battle, do you want handles on your head?
Preferably not.
It's asinine. It comes from 19th century Wagnerian crap, racist stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. Shouldn't listen to a German composer do history. They often get it wrong. No horns on helmets. Ugh, God, that one is a pet peeve.
But
But
that
also,
comes from very much not friend of the show Wagner, who's a big inspiration on very much not friend of the show Adolf Hitler. So
Very much not friend of the show.
very much not friend.
Very much not friend of the show.
Very much not
And very
friend.
much not innovator.
Yeah, no, not an innovator at all. And neither was Wagner sticking a fat chick up with some horns on her head. And it was just.
But what about her structured settlement? And her need of cash now.
Look, it's cute when she does it like that. The other one is something that gets misinterpreted in the more pop culture, that Vikings are supposed to be these like 6 foot tall, Adonises, right? They're just supposed to be so attractive. And you're just like, oh my God, hey, there you go. Look at that. They're supposed to be gorgeous. And it's slightly misinterpreted Viking history, because the reason women fell at the feet of these Vikings, not because they're tall, not because they're necessarily blonder than the guy that they have in their own bed. It's because they bathed more regularly. The Viking grooming habits, they brushed their teeth, they took immaculate care of their beards and their hair, they were perfumed, and they bathed, which made a great alternative. So, I mean, you're not falling into the arms of Fabio. You're falling into the arms of someone that has brushed their teeth this century.
You are falling into the opposite of Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah, basically.
That, well, I mean, to be fair, Joey and I have done our fair share of reenactments. And after the third day or so, I don't even want to be around me.
No.
So now you can understand these women who see well-groomed, well-perfumed men and think, I'll give it a shot.
Not bad.
I mean, comparatively.
Comparatively.
Yeah. Of course, we have our little thing that we do. Bo, let's not be rude. Let's just go straight into it. What's in your cup? Lauren, what do you have tonight?
All right. So this is appropriate. It's from Jameson Brewery. It is called Jameson Crested. It is a pot still whiskey that you only can get in Northern Europe mostly, but Ireland specifically. It is not available, and it is so delicious. If you love a pot still whiskey or an Irish whiskey, Jameson Crested is absolutely delicious, and it's dirt cheap in Europe. It's less expensive than a full bottle of Jameson.
Nice. We love inexpensive and accessible drinks. That's what we'll call accessible.
So it could be, a decent Viking drink, is what you're saying.
I mean, Dublin was a Viking settlement, so everything that flows from it can be, traced back to it. So,
how about you? I'll save my boredom for later.
I have a swaller left of some Buffalo Trace bourbon. Fantastic stuff. It's a little pricey, but you know what? I'm willing to shell out a few shillings for decent bourbon. It's not E&J. That stuff gives me PTSD from my undergrad days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm really upset with both of you. Neither of you thought to bring mead.
I ran out of mead. That was my problem.
Yeah.
I've had awful experiences on mead, so I avoid. It's the sugar. I can't do it. It makes me sick.
No, I tell you what, Lauren, please tell Joey about this unfortunate green drink that you introduced me to one time at Red
right.
Brew.
Okay, so during my grad school tenure, I worked down on Bourbon Street, not like that, as an MC at a karaoke spot, and I learned to drink something called chartreuse, which has very medieval origins. It's from Belgian monks, and it's an herbal liqueur, and we used to enjoy a shot or 12 back in the day. And I infected it on, very much plague rat style on my graduating cohort at LSU, and it became our shot of choice. And it does taste a bit like if you have drained a lawnmower of both its gasoline and clippings.
With fresh cracked black pepper inside.
It's herbal, and it's a arguably, as Bo should tell you, it's a head high. You don't feel it in your body. It goes straight to your brain, and it's quite lovely once you get over the dog fart taste.
I'm using this as a white flag. I was waving the white flag of truce with chartreuse. That was the most bizarre feeling I've ever had from alcohol, and something I never want to experience again. But I can't say that I didn't do it. So, and I was called out several times to do it. So,
it made a wonderful drink for our PhD cohort. I made quite a few very notable now historians drink that at very, very celebrated events at LSU back in the 2010s. So it was, you have to do it because it's an experience. Much like Malort is something you have to do when you go to Chicago. Chartreuse, as a medievalist, you should do it because there's nothing quite like it.
No, I think that's a hard pass for me.
Joey said, "I'll stick to my American stuff."
I've shown up just to say that I've drank some tea tonight. It's sleepy time tea because we're doing this recording after 7 o'clock, and if I have any caffeine after 3, it's game over for going to bed at a reasonable time. But since bedtime is in about 15 minutes, sleepy time tea is the strategy.
I understand.
But chartreuse, that just sounds terrible.
Yeah,
even if I still did drink, I don't think I could do that.
The color came from the drink. If that makes it better or worse.
Oh, I think I'm going to stick with look, I'll be good for like 2 drinks a year. One is at Oktoberfest. One is we have Waves Festival. And then on the alternating year, it's at Disney World for Epcot. And like, that's it. Like, I play it safe with my drinks. If I'm in England, I'll have a beer, a nice, good, warm, as it should be beer. And then when I'm in Disney World, I'll hit up like the Rose and Crown and get an apple cider because that's just fantastic. Outside of that, though, it's tea for me, my friends. And then Oktoberfest, how can you go wrong? I mean, Vorsteiner. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. That bitterness, that it's like leaves in your mouth. I can't wait for that. Very good. Very good.
Not my favorite thing at Oktoberfest, but yeah, I'm more not a Vorsteiner, the one that tastes like bananas. That one's, I can't think of the name of it.
I can't think of that either.
It tastes like bananas, and it's absolutely delicious.
But if you're going this week, we might see you there because we're planning on making a little run down to the Deutsches house.
Oh, that's a great spot. Great spot. They have great German language courses.
They sure do. So shout out to them.
Yeah,
history.
Lord's work.
Doing the Lord's work. Now, Lauren, we have a new segment here on Homebrew History, and new as in we've only had it for the last 2 episodes, so we don't even include it on the briefing. And I don't even know if you got the briefing for what to expect. So here's the deal. You get the last couple minutes of the show here to give us the one thing that anyone who's listened to this so far, who's made it through this is what do they need to take away? What's the most important thing? What is the final word?
The final word is that too often medieval history gets reduced to knights on horseback and castles and, ridiculous Ren Fair tropes, when actually there are the building blocks of our modern world there. Negotiating power politics, understanding women's roles in the family, understanding man's roles in women's lives, understanding the dynamic of the two. And yeah, we're talking about concubinage and sex and things, but these are commonalities that bring us closer to the medieval world. We're not that far removed. I realize 1,000 years seems like eons, but they're the same human beings that we are, and understanding the medieval world gives us insight into us and understanding relationships now, as we too often do. We have this, dichotomy of this and that, and it has to be one or the other. And I think, oddly enough, the medieval world is a lot more open to understanding various types of relationships, both legal and extra legal. So maybe we could learn a few things.
Well, that feels convincing for me. I feel like that's a good way to kind of wrap things up.
That was prophetic.
Prophetic. That's a good. Look at you. Look at that. Well, this has been great, Bo. Fantastic as always. For our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following along with us, and we'll catch you next time. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. And if I didn't say it before, like and subscribe. And I think I speak for everybody when I say we'll catch you later.
Cheers, folks.